today. I'm so excited to be here. Listen, before we get going, I just want to say I'm as frustrated with the media as you, but you know what? They're here today. Let's treat them with some respect. They're here today. Let's trust them to do their best to tell this story. I'm frustrated with media all across this country, but they're here today. So let's be polite to them, okay? Let's give them the benefit of the doubt. Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. These lockdowns are unconstitutional. They're destroying the country. They're destroying families, and we know that. We know it. The studies are coming out. We can see it with our own two eyes. The stories I heard earlier, the story of this gentleman here, who has is it a thyroid cancer, sir?
I've got a 2.5-inch nodule in my thyroid and an autoimmune.
He's got a nodule in his thyroid. He hasn't been able to get any of the treatments that he's needed over the last 15 months. This is what we're seeing. We are seeing routine procedures turn into deathly procedures because we are focusing on COVID-19 to the exclusion of everything else. We are seeing businesses shut to never open again. And we heard the story of this young woman today. I can list stories in my own writing of young, healthy people who have started businesses and they're going under. I am a former small business owner. I operated small businesses for several years. There is no way I could have maintained my business to be open in this environment. We have never been in a situation before where the government has, on a broad scale, mandated that businesses must close. It is crazy. And, you know, one of the questions I received this morning as well, you know, isn't this dangerous? Frankly, go to a local Costco. You'll see more people in there than there are here. The rules make no sense. We've had enough months to see the results of these rules. They don't make sense. Keeping a healthy at home helps nobody. This is an absolute disgrace. I brought with me here today copies of the Canadian Bill of Rights and the Charter of Freedom. Those freedoms are being trampled upon. And we are seeing the court system, the entire system here is breaking down. We are seeing courts, the government they're issuing tickets, but they're not letting anybody appeal them. They keep kicking them down the road because they don't want to lose in a charter challenge. And we're seeing the courts, because of COVID, they're not willing to hear these charter challenges. They're pushing them down the road. What kind of a society are we living in where we can't even get reasonable redress in our courts of law? It's crazy. It's crazy. That is why it's time for us, individual Canadians, to take the power back, to protest peacefully, to redress our grievances with our politicians. And I'm telling you, it's time for a new order in Canada. It's time for a new great reset. A great reset where politicians don't lie anymore. A great reset where politicians tell the truth. A great reset where businesses can open and flourish. A great reset where we're free to go to church. Amen. Amen. We have seen the absolute destruction of our economy. We are seeing failures by governments at all levels. The provincial government, all parties have failed us. They have failed us. The federal government, all parties have failed us. We are seeing our country drown in debt that has never been accumulated before. From the history of this country to today, never. We are seeing the current federal Liberal government, after having spent $500 billion to pay healthy people to stay home, we are hearing them say that the answer to the current economic malaise is an additional $100 billion stimulus. It's a scam. They are using this. They are using this as an opportunity to foist their agenda on us. They've said it. They have said it. I have a piece of advice for the federal Liberals. I'll give it to them for free. It'll cost them nothing. The way to get the economy back on track is to open up. 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 It won't cost them a penny. People are ready to go back to work. They're ready to participate in society. There is no question that people have died from COVID-19. I've seen people there's been some of my own family that have caught it, and it was nasty for them. They didn't die, some have. It was nasty for them. But the idea that we should shut down the entire economy, sell our future down the drain for generations, keeping healthy people at home against all evidence is crazy. And we should rightly stand up. We should rightly push back. I am confident that what we're seeing today, someone in the media was saying, well, I don't think, what you guys are doing is going to make a difference. Well, I will say this. There is no other issue. I was here in Chatham previously on the Conservative leadership race, and as much as I loved my own candidacy, I didn't get as many people out. There is no other issue. There is no other issue that would bring this number of people out in Chatham. And where there's one, there's 100. Where there's one, there's 100. We know it. We know it. This is a serious issue. You can barely get 20 people to come out to protest some kind of government cuts. We have hundreds of people here. We have probably 500 people here. This is just Chatham. We had 1,000 people in Barrie. We had, 800 people in Stratford on the coldest day in months. This is hitting a chord. We're growing, we're swelling. This is a groundbreaking movement, and we will never turn back. And those politicians that begin to come out against the lockdowns, God bless them, but we will never forget. Never forget. When it becomes fashionable to be against the lockdowns, when, maybe one of the federal opposition parties, maybe one of the other parties comes out and says, yeah, maybe these lockdowns are too bad. Where were you? Where were you? You were asleep at the switch. Our country is going down the drain and you were asleep. We will never, ever forget. Ever. I voted for Doug Ford's party. I was glad that he won the leadership. Thank God he did versus some of the other candidates. However, I can never, ever support that government again. Doug Ford. Fire 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 Doug Ford. I will leave you with this phrase written at the bottom of the Canadian Bill of Rights by John D. Diefenbaker himself. I am a Canadian, a free Canadian, free to speak without fear, free to worship God in my own way, free to stand for what I think right, free to oppose what I believe wrong, free to choose those who shall govern my country. This heritage of freedom I pledge to uphold for myself and all mankind. Never stand down. Never retreat.
Freedom!
Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! Freedom! freedom, 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 freedom. I'm going to say one other thing, lest I be misconstrued. It is true that many of the things that have occurred in this pandemic have been through provincial action and inaction, and the fault does lie there. But it also lies at the feet of our federal Liberal government. They have been a colossal failure in managing this pandemic. They facilitated these lockdowns. They stood back, they hunkered down, and they turned on the money spigots. They have facilitated every single lockdown in this country, against all evidence. They have done nothing proactive in this to treat this pandemic. I have asked numerous questions. I've said, listen, are you looking at repurposing existing drugs? Maybe there's some that can be used. Are you doing research into new treatments? Are you moving heaven and earth in every possible way? I've mentioned ivermectin on the floor of the House of Commons. I've mentioned that very drug. What are you doing? Well, Mr. Speaker, as we've told the member, we're doing this and that. They're not doing anything. They don't even believe in vitamin D. They're doing nothing. They're facilitating all of this stuff over and over and over. They are doing this on purpose. They have sold our children down the river with their new debt. They don't even believe in balanced budgets. They don't believe in it. This has been a failure at every single level of government. They're all culpable, and we must never, ever forget. So let's end with one last chant. Trudeau, let my people go. 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 Thank you, and God bless Canada.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you so much for joining us today. Our next guest is Randy Hillier, MPP.
Thank you, Chatham. Thank you very much for coming out on this beautiful day and standing for freedom. Before I get into what I have to say, I want to just do a little housekeeping. A lot of people picked up no more lockdown signs today. We're trying to get as many signs out as we can. We've got about 25,000 now. If you had a request in for a lawn sign and you picked one up today, let us know on the website. And this is all about having the ability to do something tangible, to do something effective to stop these lockdowns. So I encourage everybody to go to nomorlockdowns.ca. If you haven't got a sign already, request a sign. We also have volunteer groups in each area that are delivering postcards, our facts versus fears, into people's mailboxes to help inform people, help people to get over this hysteria and this fear that our governments have been promoting for 59 weeks now. But also, don't forget, contact your local councillors, contact your school boards, contact your public health units. Tell them what you think, right? Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if you get a response. You tell them what you want. Right? They work for us. They work for you. If you don't tell them what you want, they're not going to know. So tell them. Tell them often. Tell them loudly. Tell them clearly that no more lockdowns is the solution.
That's right. It's essential.
So,
No more medical mafia, dishonest doctors.
so let me just say about something about medical. You heard Jason Cook up here earlier. But yesterday when I was out in Stratford, a young mom came to see me. And she had tears in her eyes. She had her daughter with her. And she told me a story. And she sent me the details of that story this morning. And last April, her husband, I believe he was 37 years old, was scheduled to get a pacemaker installed in April of 2020. It got delayed. And on May 30th, he had a heart attack. He went into the hospital on May 30th, went into ICU, and he never came out. Right? And on June 7th, her husband, the father of those two young girls, passed away. That father, that husband, was killed by lockdowns. Right? He was killed by the lockdown. And there's a term. There's many of these stories, unfortunately. There's a lot of these stories. One of the first stories I heard back in April of 2020 was this wife and mother called me up, and her 58-year-old husband required a live liver transplant. But because it required 2 ventilators, and the ventilators were exclusively to be used for COVID patients, even though there wasn't any COVID patients, that elective surgery didn't happen. Right? There's a term that I think it's been hard to find the words to describe what has happened to our country and what we're doing to it during the last 13 months. But I found one that I think is the most appropriate. And it's an older term. We don't use it. But it's called social murder. And when I look at what happened to that 37-year-old husband and dad, and that 58-year-old husband and dad, and so many others, we knew this was going to happen. We knew it was premeditated because we knew it was going to happen, right? That is social murder. That's what Doug Ford, Justin Trudeau, every other premier, every political leader, every public health expert, every public health bureaucrat have instituted policies that they know will result in the early death of people. That's social murder. That's what they've been doing. And we can't allow it any longer. We have taken a great country with great people.
Yes, sir.
And these lockdown policies, we've told people not to be Canadian. We've told them to keep apart from one another. But that's not what Canadians do. We get together. We get together for worship. We get together for preaching and for partying. We get together for politics. We get together for any reason. And they're telling us that we have to be masked, that we're dangerous, that our little children are dangerous, that they're vectors of disease. That's not what children are. That's not what children are. Children are our future. Children are our lives. They're not dangers to us. They're not vectors of disease. And they're telling us that we don't need to have the rule of law anymore, that we don't need to have elected representatives. Just the experts will tell us what to do. The experts will tell us what to do. And we're taking this great country, and we're telling everybody to snitch on one another, to rat everybody out. That's not Canadian. That's not Canadian. We've seen those countries that do that. History is littered with them. And now we're seeing, think what's happening here. We've sealed our borders, our provincial borders, our national borders, our international borders. We're arresting people for walking on the street. We have the OPP now last week have said that they're going to inform the Children's Aid Society when they see a parent out in a protest.
Shame.
So now if you dissent, we're going to bring the full weight of the state down on moms and dads and threaten to take away their children. That's not Canadian. That's not my country. It's not our country. We know what countries those are. And we have to start, Canadians are polite. We've always been polite. We're tolerant. We're accommodating. But it's being taken advantage of. Our governments are taking advantage of us. And, we have to start calling a spade a spade. We have to start calling a liar a liar. We have to start calling a fraud a fraud. And all those terms. You can hang them on Doug Ford. You can hang them on Justin Trudeau. You can hang them on Dr. Tam and Dr. Williams. They're liars and they're frauds. And we don't buy this. We don't buy this. And I know we have to start also recognizing what country, what state seals its borders, attacks its citizens for speaking out, tickets people for having public dissent on policy. What sort of country does that? What sort of country? Communism, fascism, totalitarianism. We have to start speaking truthfully that our country, our beloved country, and our friends and our families, we are all being taken down a path, a dangerous, dangerous path, one that we don't want to believe our governments would ever do to us, but they're doing it to us. They can't get away with it unless we permit them, unless we allow them. Freedoms can't be taken, they can only be surrendered. They can't be taken. And I want to share this story. I shared it this weekend because it was a powerful story for me. Last Friday, I attended a ceremony in Ottawa, an unsanctioned ceremony, an unlawful ceremony. I broke some rules, I believe. But it was but I got a call from the president of the Korean Veterans Association, Korean War Veterans Association. And he was deeply disturbed and troubled and angry that once again the anniversary of the forgotten war, the Korean War, the forgotten war of freedom, was not going to be allowed to be held this year.
Shame. Shame.
And these fellas are not young anymore. You know, the youngest Korean War vets are 90. And, you know, they know that there's not many more opportunities for them to get together and to commemorate and to be with their colleagues from so long ago. And he said, you know, the government had canceled it the government will not send any representatives to it. And I said, well, I'll go. And I brought a wreath with me, and I told people I was going. And when we got there, there was about 10 Korean War vets, including a young man named Ron Burgon, who's 90 years of age and one of the last surviving soldiers from the Battle of Kapyong in 1951. And so there was these 10 elderly vets, and then we had about 10 other younger vets at that memorial, including my son, who also served in the 2nd Battalion of the Princess Patricias. And there was other people who came out to it as well, civilians. And the military attaché from the Korean embassy came out. Just think of that for a moment. That was striking to me. That was striking. Like, the Korean military attaché was out to this Remembrance Day ceremony, but our own Canadian government was not.
Shame.
To recognize the valor, the courage, the freedom that these young men fought for and won. And just to let you know, this Battle of Kapyong, it was such an overwhelming victory for this Canadian battalion. They faced a whole brigade, over 5,000. They were outnumbered 10-1 by the Communist Chinese and North Korean forces. And they stood their ground. You know, for 3 nights, they stood their ground, and they won.
Yes.
They won. And that's what Canadians do. We stand our ground.
Yes, sir.
We can be polite. We can be tolerant. We can be accommodating. But we must stand our ground. And when you stand your ground, it's not just your freedom. It's everybody's freedom. Everybody's freedom. Those young men, they bestowed onto us our freedom. The freedom that I've enjoyed, that my family has enjoyed, and that all of us have enjoyed. They put their lives on the line for it. They were facing snipers, not sniffles. They were facing real bombs, not just a relentless barrage of fear. And they stood their ground. And then the Korean military attaché came and placed a chrysanthemum, the flower of Korea, South Korea, on the cenotaph. And to recognize a chrysanthemum for each of the fallen Canadians at Kapyong. And then the elderly vets, followed by the younger vets, walked up and they took the poppy off their breast and they pinned it to each of those chrysanthemums to recognize and commemorate the Canadians who stood their ground and fell, but stood their ground for us. And that, what this really meant was, here Canadians have forgotten, many Canadians have forgotten what our freedom is all about. They've forgotten the price that we have paid to have it. And the South Koreans have not forgotten about freedom. And it was striking to me. But it was clear also that the South Koreans understand the importance of freedom. Every day they're reminded of it. All they have to do is look out and look beyond the demilitarized zone and they see what happens to a people who are not free. They look across into North Korea, and they see oppression. They see tyranny. They don't see the standard of living that freedom brings. They see despair and gulags and concentration camps for people who dissent. They know the importance of freedom. They haven't forgotten. So that military attaché, he came out. And I think Canadians have to look beyond the zone of fear that this government is promoting to us. We have to look beyond that media zone of fear that they're promoting to us, that they're bombarding us with every day. And we have to say, that's a fraud. That's a lie. And we know where it takes us to. And it's not a good place. It's a bad place. It's a dark place. And we're not going to go there. We're going to be, no matter how many there are, we're going to stand our ground. We're going to demand freedom. We're going to assert freedom. I don't care how many tickets they give me. We can wallpaper our walls with tickets. Our freedom is going to be with us everywhere and every day and every time. We will not be threatened. We will not be fearful. You know, I came to learn that the most often repeated phrase in Scripture, and I'm not somebody who has read Scripture. There's far more people who know about Scripture than I am. But the most repeated phrase in the Bible is fear not. Fear not. Fear not Ford. Fear not Tam. Fear not Trudeau. Fear not the lies and the fraud that they're promoting. And that gives us all the courage to stand up and regain our free Canada. And freedom to worship, freedom to travel, freedom to be with our families. No more cruelty to our children. No more cruelty to the elderly as we leave them isolated and terrorized in confinement. This is not what Canadians do. We're going to win this because there is no other outcome. Right? There is no other outcome. We need and will win this for our children, for our grandchildren. We need to be strong, like those men at Cap Young. We need to bestow onto our children and our grandchildren the freedom that our ancestors bestowed onto us. Thank you very much. No more lockdowns. No more lockdowns. No more lockdowns. No more lockdowns. No more lockdowns.
I was getting a little carried away with myself and I forgot my agenda.
Someday I'm going to have to bring a script with me and know what so I don't forget. But listen, there's two things I'd like to do as well. I've been blessed that these endeavors to end the lockdowns and to restore freedom. Back in January, we created the End the Lockdown Caucus, and Derek Sloan and Maxine Bernier and Daryl Hurlick and Steve Van Loan, two municipal councillors in Ontario. We got together, a small group, 5 of us. 5 of us. And we said we're going to have an end to lockdown caucus. And now we have 60. And we're going to keep growing. We're going to keep growing. So I want to thank Garrett, not only for joining the end to lockdown caucus, but for joining with us to bring a message of freedom.
That's right.
Of responsible government. And to end this tyranny that is in our country. So, Derek, thank you very much for joining us here in Chatham today. In Elmore and Stratford yesterday. In Barrie on Saturday. It's a big province, but we're going to get everywhere. We're going to get everywhere. Even to Kingsville one day, whoever. And to Sarnia, and to Windsor, and everywhere else. But we're going to have a little tune here, and I think Derek's got a better singing voice than I do. Okay? But we're going to do a duet here for the first time.
We can't wrap this thing up without singing "O Canada." And this is one thing that's been missing. So, let's do it. You're the power.